Guys, I'm Jerry Miller, and thank you kindly for joining us on the I Love CVille Show. It's great to connect with you guys through the I Love CVille Network. A lot we're going to cover on today's program, the Wednesday edition, Hump Day edition of the show. We have some programming notes that we're going to get to you here in a matter of moments, including 4 big-time interviews that are lined up in the next 8 days here on the I Love CVille Network. Some topics we're going to cover today, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to highlight Livable CVille, the activist organization that has disguised itself as a lobbying group, is now, ladies and gentlemen, it's showing its warts, and it's showing its vulnerability. And locals in our community are starting to see through the disingenuous tactics that this activist group is doing as it pertains to the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, as it pertains to an activist group driving tax exposure for all of us. We'll talk about it on today's show. Even progressive Reddit, Judah, Reddit, a very progressive social media site, I would say, far left-leaning Reddit, is calling Livable CVille out for some of its disingenuous tactics. We'll talk about that, ladies and gentlemen, today on the program. We'll highlight the fact that Sally Duncan is vastly outraising Dave Shreve and the Jack Jewett district race. Judah, look across the street right there. Gentleman we were just talking about, the attorney.
Oh, well, it's great to see him
walking into the building. Yep. A lot we're going to cover on the Jack Jewett race, including Duncan's fundraising prowess and whether or not it's a barometer that Sally Duncan is going to win this Jack Jewett seat, which I have called one of the most important elections in Albemarle County's most recent history. We'll talk about that today. We will talk the new zoning ordinance trial. There's a date set, June 26th. Judah's going to set the table on that for us. I got to sneeze. Excuse me. Goodness, that was a sneeze in the making. We're going to talk Apathy at the University of Virginia with the athletic department and its fan base, and how, if you're Carla Williams and the athletic department, you transition apathy into action, apathy into engagement. That topic on today's show. We'll highlight on the program, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that the University of Virginia is the most expensive top 50 university in the country. Number 1 most expensive top 50 university in the country is right here in Charlottesville, Virginia, and they have no plans of making it affordable in any means. We'll talk about that on today's show. Like the show, share the show. John Blair, thank you for doing that. Ginny Hu, thank you for doing that. Got local media watching the program. I want to highlight some interviews that we have upcoming. Tomorrow, Jerry Cox is in studio. He's an attorney. He's the head of the Lewis Mountain Neighborhood Association, the Lewis Mountain HOA. And Mr. Cox will join us his second rodeo on the I Love CVille Show. He will put into perspective the 1-year anniversary of Evergreen Builders and Developers purchasing the Brick Rancher on Alderman Road, and what has transpired since they made that $800,000 plus purchase, and how the Lewis Mountain neighborhood has utilized strategy and organization and engagement to work against 6 brownstones that have commanded much of the attention of the development community, the activist community, and the new zoning ordinance watchers from afar. Nothing has happened to that site, but Jerry Cox has an insider's perspective. He's on the show tomorrow. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, we have Roger Voisinay and Richard Price. Roger Voisinay, a beloved figure. He's a realtor. He's a developer. He's a Charlottesville evangelist. Richard Price, an architect, also a Charlottesville evangelist, also a developer. Richard Price, a fantastic squash player. Richard Price, I hope you hear that, Richard, a fantastic squash player. Roger and Richard are bringing a project to market in Woolen Mills, and it's been in the words of Deep Throat, a torturous experience for Richard, Roger, and their team, but they have some silver lining, and they will relay that silver lining to the viewing and listening public on the water cooler of Central Virginia, the I Love CVille Show, on Wednesday, June 18th, 1 week from today. And we have, ladies and gentlemen, the team from CVille Smash, the indoor pickleball facility that is in the old Marshall's location. That team is going to be in studio next week as well to highlight their project that is soon to come to market on Thursday, June 19th. So mark your calendars. Some big-time interviews lined up. Judah, let's go to a studio camera and a two-shot as we welcome J-Dubs. He wants J-Dubs and not the Wizard of Wickower. J-Dubs, you are now on screen. The headline you find most intriguing and why?
I'm intrigued by the fact that somebody really wants Sally Duncan on the council.
Board of Supervisors. It's Albemarle County.
As opposed to David Shreve.
Vastly outraising David Shreve.
And I don't know if that's...
a barometer if she will win or not.
I don't know if that's due to her fundraising skills or just the backing of the Democratic machine in Central Virginia. Great
question. Fantastic question. I think some things are working against Dave Shreve. He's unfairly being labeled by Livable Charlottesville. The activist organization in the city, Livable Charlottesville, and its co-chair, Matthew Gillikin, are trying to stigmatize Dave Shreve as a population control-minded candidate.
What does that mean?
You can take it in a lot of...
does that mean not in my backyard? Like, let's
no.
Draw more people
what
into the
Livable
city?
Charlottesville is trying to do is say, this guy is a person who's trying to say whether or not families can have X amount of children or not.
Oh.
Yeah. That kind of population control. And it's not a fair characterization. They have found a commentary analysis that Shreve has published online on behalf of an organization he works for, and that commentary and analysis is being used against the candidate. We'll talk about it, and that's a perfect segue into Livable CVille here and how the community is starting, ladies and gentlemen, to see through disingenuous tactics. That conversation on today's show. Let's give John and Andrew Vermillion some love. 61 years in business. John Vermillion, Andrew Vermillion, Charlottesville Sanitary Supply, online on East High Street, online at charlottesvillesanitarysupply.com, and located on East High Street. Charlottesville Sanitary Supply is honest, communicative, knowledgeable, and experienced with anything swimming pool related, anything sanitary related, anything cleaning related. These gentlemen do it the right way, the honest way, support the businesses you want to see make another 61 years, and that's certainly one of them, Charlottesville Sanitary Supply. Set the table, Judah Wickower, and I will respond and react for a new zoning ordinance trial now set for June 26. Great reporting by Sean Tubbs of his Substack.
Yep, they are finally going to get the trial going. It would be nice if we could get an answer, get a final solution on this, but I doubt that this is going to be the last word we hear on this.
Keep going. What's the who, what, when, where, why?
Just a second. The zoning code was adopted in 2023.
Just to who, what, when, where, why. June 26 is the case, right? We know when it was adopted.
Mm-hmm. And...
All right, I'll set the stage here for the viewers and listeners as Judah does a little reconnaissance over there. Look, we have homeowners that are suing the city. The city is being represented by outside counsel. We'll see if the new city attorney, how much the new city attorney is involved on this. But this is a tangible step in what has been a drawn-out legal proceeding. And I've been told that the plaintiffs, if it does not go that way, will appeal with the judge presiding over the case, Judge Worrell. They're going to claim being biased with his ruling because he's a city homeowner, and if he pushes the new zoning ordinance through, this only drives value for his house. Furthermore, the judge's wife has been a housing activist a documented housing activist, which the plaintiffs are saying is a second conflict of interest for a judge to preside over this case. Regardless, ladies and gentlemen, we have a date on the calendar, June 26th, for a pretty historic turn of events or storyline in the city. We have the most radical zoning ordinance, some would say, in the country, and it's going before a judge on the 26th of June. Judah, some color from you.
This is, as you've stated in the past, potentially holding back a lot of potential development in the area. Obviously, we have a bunch of luxury apartments going up, but in terms of housing, the fact that this zoning ordinance could potentially get overturned, or whatever the decision might be, could be holding back a lot of developers from getting some housing going.
John Blair's got a point of correction on the headline you wrote. Is that June 26th of 2006 over there, Judah, as opposed to June 26th of this year? What is the court date, Judah?
I believe it's June 26th.
John Blair is saying that's 2026. Do you have that in front of you?
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll stand corrected over there. That's a headline that we need some clarity on from the Wickower, Wizard of Wickower over there. Thank you, John Blair. Regardless, we have a date set. And that's something that we all can at least put on our calendar from a tangible results standpoint. And this is something that was intriguing, speaking of Reddit, and it's going to be a topic that we're going to cover later in the show. Planning Commissioner Rory Stolzenberg offers a little clarity on Reddit on what is actually happening with the new zoning ordinance, highlighting the fact that there are only 20 projects submitted so far. Only 20, and only 4 have been approved. One of the 4 we will discuss next week with Roger Voisinet and Richard Price with what they're doing with Woolen Mills Court. So we've seen next to nothing materialize with this new zoning ordinance, ladies and gentlemen. Next to nothing. And you're rotating headlines on straight over there. I doubt John Blair's wrong over there, Judah. 2026 is the year. I'm pretty confident John Blair's got his stuff buttoned up. Next headline, what do you got, Judah? We've covered the 20 plans with 4 approved. Next, what do you got?
Community seeing through Livable CVille tactics?
Neil Williamson, I'm going to get to your comments here in a matter of moments on Dave Shreve, Georgia Gilmer, Kevin Yancey, and Bill McChesney. I'll get to your comments here in a matter of moments as well. Look, I feel like I've been ringing the bell on this for significant periods of time. On what I'm seeing with Livable CVille, with their activism and their fronting as a policy or lobbying organization, and the impact it's having negatively on Charlottesville and Albemarle County. I want to highlight the fact that they are offering a who, what, when, where, why of supervisor races, while also behind the scenes backing through donations and also backing with influence candidates. So it would seem to me it would be a disingenuous position as a lobbying and activist group, as a policy group, to say this is what is happening in an election, and then behind the scenes using money and influence to back candidates. That's exactly what's happening with Sally Duncan. With Livable CVille. I highlighted on the I Love CVille Network in the past that, goodness gracious, they have their hands cuffed right now in the city because the new zoning ordinance is at an absolute standstill, and now they're shifting their attention to Albemarle County. And I'm concerned that some of the collateral damage or fallout we've seen from their policy work and their activism will now materialize in Albemarle County. You are seeing a number of comments on Reddit, which is a progressive platform, a progressive social media site, far left-leaning social media site that straight up is calling out Livable CVille, including one comment: the worst thing to happen to the city, county, housing affordability, and livability. I wish you all would go away and waste different taxpayer-based money. This is the organization that pushed the new zoning ordinance through, which has done nothing but make the community more expensive. It's materialized no development, and now they're doing the same scare tactics following the same playbook in Albemarle County. And I'm utilizing our platform. We spare no punches. We're unabashed with our commentary. You, the viewer and listener, you, the taxpayer, you, the homeowner, you, the tenant, you, the business owner, I encourage you to follow what they are doing, because it's up to us as a community to push back and say, look, enough already. Enough already. We cannot be expected to pay more taxes on our personal property, on our rooftops. You cannot make the dirt more opportunistic, because all you're going to do to Albemarle County is what you did to the city of Charlottesville, and it's just going to make it a playground for the wealthy. And that's what's happening right now. That is absolutely what's happening right now. Thoughts that you want to add to this, and then Judah Wickower, I'm going to go to comments.
It's nice that some people are seeing through their antics and and deciding that they don't want to take it anymore.
The Jack Jewett race with Duncan and Shreve, if I had a prediction of where this is going to go, I think Duncan's going to get the win, much to my disappointment. Okay, I offer commentary here on where I would stand. I think Duncan is going to get the victory, and I think it's going to yield or lead a board in Albemarle County that's going to be as tax-focused and as rooftop density-focused as we've ever seen in Albemarle history. And you will see Duncan and Pruitt, Ned Galloway, and maybe Fred Missel in the Samuel Miller District vote in a block to tax and densify Albemarle to levels we have never seen in the history of the county, and quality of life will certainly be impacted. Neil Williamson, a man I respect tremendously. Neil and I don't always agree on everything, and that's totally fine. I know it would be fine by Neil. It's certainly fine by me. I respect him tremendously. I hope he has the same respect for me that I do for him. I admire his work. He's the president of the Free Enterprise Forum. He does highlight in a comment, ladies and gentlemen, on my personal Facebook page, that Dave Shreve was a founding member, officer of the now defunct Advocates for a Sustainable Albemarle Population, ASAP, Advocates for a Sustainable Albemarle Population. And he highlights from the CVillepedia post on ASAP, the Advocates for Sustainable Albemarle Population, that Dave Shreve was at one time a president of this organization. I want to highlight that these organizations are donating and influencing and supporting the Duncan campaign. The Realtor organization, the local Realtor organization, is supporting the Duncan campaign. The Blue Ridge Home Builders supporting the Duncan campaign. It's no coincidence that the Realtor organization and the home building organization is supporting Duncan's campaign, because Duncan wants to build much more density in Albemarle County. Okay? If this race to you, the voter, is about taxes and whether we have overbuilt Albemarle County, and from my standpoint, the Jack Jewett race is about these two things. Have we overbuilt Albemarle County from a housing standpoint, prioritizing rooftops over infrastructure? And will we continue down this rabbit hole of tax? If you think we're going to continue down this rabbit hole of tax, and we've overbuilt Albemarle County, then Shreve is your vote. If you think that Albemarle County should build more housing and should tax more of its residents, then Duncan is your vote. That it's as clear-cut as that, this race. And from my standpoint, this is a bellwether or a barometer of where Albemarle County is as a county in totality with its ideology. Okay? Both are Democrats. You don't have a Republican and a Democrat running like you have Smith and Missel in the Samuel Miller District. And the Jack Jewett District, you have both Democrats. You have Shreve being labeled as a population control guy. Neil Williamson's a smart guy. He's dug up some information that's available to anybody to find online that may back that statement. I mentioned to Shreve when he was in studio on the I Love CVille show that if he's going to win this race, he's going to have to go on the offensive. I just said it straight up to his face. I said, how you're going to win this race, you're going to have to go on the offensive. You're going to have to highlight the fact that Duncan, who is waving a public school education flag, is a private school teacher at a $27,000 a year private school. You're going to have to highlight the fact that Duncan is waving a flag that she's a renter or a tenant and affordability is an issue. The reality is it's a massive house in Earlysville that's quite expensive that her family is renting. You're going to have to wave the flag, Shreve, that her husband's making a hefty salary as a traffic engineer at Charlottesville and City Hall. You have to highlight that. Politics is a dirty game. I have not seen Shreve do any of those tactics, and we're 6 days away. And if the fundraising is a barometer of who's going to win the race, and oftentimes fundraising is, it isn't always, but oftentimes it is, ladies and gentlemen, the KPIs would indicate that Duncan's going to win here in a landslide. Judah Wickower, anything you want to add to this conversation?
What numbers do we have for the differences in fundraising?
That's in Tubbs' reporting.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out I'm looking for a good comparison. Do we have how much she has overshot him?
That's also available online.
Okay.
There's multiple. These are topics you came up with for the show.
I don't have
This
exact
is
numbers in front of me.
your prep work, your headlines here.
All right.
Not trying to throw shade over here. The first few topics were yours. How about without referencing the numbers that frankly should have been in front of us here? Your commentary, your take on what you're seeing with this race.
My commentary is that we see control firmly in the hands of the Democratic Party in Central Virginia. We've seen how hard they come out against certain types of people, whether it's Shreve or Republicans, as we've seen in school board races of recent years, and we see that the pocketbooks open up and the money flows when they have a desire to put somebody in office or a seat somewhere.
I'm going to vpap.org. Any viewer and listener can do this if they want. vpap.org, vpap.org. I'm typing Sally Duncan's name into the search bar. Top donors on vpap.org. You can find them. Chris Seaman is given $1,000. Chris Seaman, ladies and gentlemen, is literally the guy that created the phony website for Allison Spillman. Mm-hmm. One of her top donors, Sally Duncan's top donors, is the guy who created the phony website against Meg Bryce and the Allison Spillman Meg Bryce race. That to me is a huge red flag. That the guy who was at one time Allison Spillman's campaign manager stepped away from her campaign for the at-large seat for the Albemarle County School Board and then was linked through some faulty web design and development tactics to being the brain or lack thereof of a phony website to try to smear and tar Meg Bryce is one of the top donors for Sally Duncan. These are things that you would think the Shreve camp would be using.
I've got here that she raised almost $18,000. Meanwhile, Shreve raised $3,000.
That's a huge disparity
during the same period.
So, if you're Shreve with 6 days left, and you're seeing, the writing on the wall, I just highlighted a cliff notes of what you can do. Duncan, Neil Williamson, thank you. Appreciate you, Neil. 23,272. Dave Shreve, 9,392 raised. We're looking at a delta of what? Is that 2.5x off the top of my head? She's 2.5x outraised him.
Yeah.
And one of the key contributors to the Duncan campaign is the man who did the phony website against Meg Bryce and the Allison Spillman Meg Bryce race. Connie Sylvester watching the program. She follows politics very closely. She has a lot of comments here. She says, it's totally sad what's happening in the Jack Jewett race. She says, our Jack Jewett friends are supporting Dave Shreve. She says, we're experiencing one party. We have one party rule here. This will not stop until people vote and stay aware. And Connie Sylvester says, any idea why so many groups are supporting her? Is it because of Diantha McKeel? It's a great question. Diantha McKeel. I have a lot of respect for Diantha McKeel. She's retiring as supervisor in the Jack Jewett district. She came on the I Love CVille Network a couple Fridays ago on Real Talk. I respect you, Diantha McKeel. I hope you hear that first. I don't agree with your politics all the time, Diantha McKeel. And it was very clear on Real Talk that you were backing Sally Duncan, and then days later, you went on the record and officially backed Sally Duncan. What I find odd about Diantha McKeel's backing of Sally Duncan is Dave Shreve was the head of the Jack Jewett precinct and the Democratic Party for years and helped get Diantha McKeel elected on a number of times. He was in the room when he had the conversation with Diantha McKeel and encouraged her to go from school board race, from being a school board member in Albemarle County to being, ladies and gentlemen, in the run, in the mix for supervisors. He helped persuade her to make that jump, that promotion, if you may. And then he helped her get elected a number of times. Now, a man who helps a candidate or helps a multi-term supervisor get elected is persona non grata. Person non grata here. If you want to call that politics, maybe that's politics. That seems to me a bit shifty. Some would call that backstabbing.
No quid pro quo.
Okay? Shifty at best. Others would call that backstabbing. Carol Thorpe lives in the Jack Jewett district. I would like to report a robbery, she says. Carol Thorpe. I just received my Albemarle County real estate tax bill for the first half of the year. This year, my taxes went up 18%. 18%, Carol Thorpe says. In the Jack Jewett district, my tax rate went up 4.7% on top of a 2.7% increase in my assessment. The 6 thieves of the Albemarle County office building should be arrested, tarred, and feathered in McIntyre Park. God, her taxes went up 18%. Unbelievable.
Ouch.
Neil Williamson says Dave Shreve was also appointed to the EDA, Economic Development Authority. Neil Williamson, I understand that Dave Shreve was appointed to the EDA by Diantha McKeel. But if memory serves correctly, and Neil, if you could give me a comment on this, didn't Diantha McKeel also ask Dave Shreve to step down from the Economic Development Authority? She appointed him, and while he was on the EDA, he was asking very accountable questions of accountability, questions that were not smoke and mirrors, questions that were holding elected officials and Albemarle County staffers to the I, to the dotted I, and to the cross T. And Neil Williamson, if memory serves correctly, did Diantha McKeel also replace Dave Shreve from the EDA? Put that comment in the feed. Wish Neil Williamson was here. We'd have a fantastic conversation. God, I love you, Neil. Carol Thorpe also says, Diantha promised when she ran for her first term, and I quote, I want to keep property taxes low. You have more use for her than I do, Jerry. That's from Carol Thorpe in the Jack Jewett district. Look, there's 6 days left. The voters will vote. The voters will vote. Jack Jewett voters. And Republicans in the Jack Jewett can vote on this, in this race. Independents in the Jack Jewett district can vote in this race. Democrats can vote. You don't just have to be a Democrat to vote. You could be a Republican and an independent to vote in this race.
Yeah.
If you want Albemarle County to have increased taxes and more density as it applies to rooftops, then vote Sally Duncan. If you're tired of increased taxes and you're tired of the county prioritizing housing and rooftops before infrastructure, vote Dave Shreve. Neil Williamson says, I do not know who initiated his departure. I can speak to that question and offer some perspective because I do know it was Supervisor McKeel that initiated the departure. And that was the spoken word from Dave Shreve to me on who initiated the departure. And he says that departure was initiated because of questions that he was asking while on the Economic Development Board, where he was holding people very accountable. And I can see Shreve doing that.
And it would be nice to have somebody who is willing to keep keep accountability.
Deep Throat made a fantastic comparison. What the folks are using against Dave Shreve, the population control commentary, that's Meg Bryce's, how they were using her father, the late Supreme Court Justice, against her.
Yeah.
And the team that's leading that charge, the team that tarred and feathered, that led the charge of tarring and feather Meg Bryce, using her father against her, the Supreme Court Justice, Chris Seaman,
Yeah.
he led the charge, and Livable CVille. The same playbook is being utilized, ladies and gentlemen, against Dave Shreve.
Yep.
And instead of a passed away Supreme Court Justice utilizes leverage to tar and feather a candidate, population control is the leverage to tar and feather a candidate. Explain to me, am I in favor of population control? No, good God. You're married, you're a husband and a wife, have sex and make babies if you want. Make sure you can take care of those babies. Make sure you can support those babies, raise them accordingly. I'm not going to tell you what you can do in a bedroom. I'm going to tell you how many kids you can have. That's ridiculous. That is utterly ridiculous. But explain to me how population control applies to Albemarle County in a Board of Supervisors race. It does not. Now, they're going to spin it. It shows frame of mind, sensibility. It shows thinking, critical reasoning. It shows consistency and temperament. All this bullshit, okay? But that's called spin. That's effing spin. Just like the Supreme Court Justice, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, was used against candidate Bryce. None of the stuff with the late Supreme Court Justice applies to effing schools at Albemarle. That's politics, though. I'm surprised that we haven't seen Shreve be on the offensive, especially with the disparity on fundraising. And I said that to Shreve when he was in studio. I said that before he came in studio.
Yeah.
Is he too nice of a guy? Okay? He's using the door-knocking strategy. Dude, we live in a world where you can knock on so many doors, but it's what people see, read, and online that is going to influence turnout and what happens in a booth.
Not to mention word of mouth.
I mean, that's what it is. Connie Sylvester says, I'm in the Jack Jewett district, and I've absolutely been robbed with my taxes. Absolutely robbed. Suzanne Coffey watching the program. I got every media outlet in town watching the show right now. Next headline, what do you got, Judah Wickhauer?
Next up, we've got that UVA is the most expensive top 50 public university.
You got that lower third on screen?
Just about.
Do you have the who, what, when, where, why on this?
Yeah.
All right. And it's on point, right?
Here we go.
I had a meeting at 11:45 this morning that lasted till about 12:20 p.m. Go ahead.
This is from the Jefferson Council. They would like to ensure that the cost of UVA remains competitive. Third and fourth year out-of-state undergraduates at UVA are being charged more than their counterparts at Harvard, and I mean these numbers. First years at UVA, almost $80,000.
Unbelievable.
Third and fourth years, $84,000. The McIntyre School, $93,000.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
And sadly, that makes UVA less competitive. Not that seems to be stopping people from applying there. But how many middle class, lower to middle class families are just skipping? Are just applying at other schools. How do we ensure that UVA remains competitive? And not only that, but is there? It's like there's an arms race to see who can raise costs of schooling.
This is what it's come down to. Here's what it's come down to. And I bleed orange and blue. I effing bleed orange and blue. My dad went there. I went there. My brother went there. I live in Charlottesville. I understand the importance of the University of Virginia to Central Virginia, to Charlottesville, to Albemarle County, to the businesses that I own. Businesses in deal brokering and real estate. We're basically a venture studio, if you may. We birth ideas, businesses, and brands for our clients and ourselves. And we take them from birth, or if they're already been born and they're in the adolescent stage, the teenage years, the 20-something, the 30-something, the middle-age years, we help take them into more significant maturity. And more significant maturity means more revenue. I understand the significance of the University of Virginia with that venture studio we have, with what it means to Central Virginia. But I speak I'm unabashed with my commentary. I spare no punches. The current administration at the University of Virginia is so punch drunk with this new Ivy League moniker that's been bestowed on the University of Virginia. They would rather pursue this new Ivy League moniker, and it's been bestowed on UVA by media outlets elsewhere, calling UVA a new Ivy. Okay? So punch drunk with actualizing this moniker that they will spare no expense to blossom under this marquee. And the expenses, the collateral damage of this blossoming under the new Ivy marquee is the lower class, the middle class, and the upper middle class out-of-state student is frankly no longer welcome at the University of Virginia. It has become an out-of-state student body of the wealthy 1% families. And when you have an out-of-state student body of the wealthy 1% families, you have a student body that, ladies and gentlemen, is homogenous in its look, homogenous in its socioeconomic status, and has a dramatic, long-standing impact on Charlottesville and Albemarle County for decades to come. Because these students, their 4 years as undergraduates, these 1%ers from out of state, they're going to effing fall in love with Charlottesville and Albemarle County just like me. I knew halfway through my first year at the University of Virginia that I was going to call Charlottesville and Albemarle County my home for well after college and beyond. I had fallen in love with Charlottesville. We all have fallen in love with Charlottesville. That's why we live here. When 1%ers, and a large portion of the student body is 1%ers, go to UVA, a large portion of them are going to fall in love with Charlottesville. They're going to stay here post-college, post-graduation, or they're going to try to come back here and start their families with their 1% wealth. And if you don't think this has an impact in gentrification, increased cost of living, changing the socioeconomic look, changing the racial look, changing the feel of Charlottesville, you're not reading the tea leaves correctly. And when J.J. Wagner, who is the esteemed, I hope J.J. Wagner Davis hears this, when the Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer at the University of Virginia, a talented executive, J.J. Wagner, she is fantastically talented. When she's on the Board of Visitors meeting room table, like she was this past week, and she snaps back to a board member about the fine line between management and governance at the University of Virginia, basically saying we need to spend money, we need to raise tuition, we need to maintain these out-of-state costs, to maintain our management here, to maintain what we're trying to do at the University of Virginia. When she snaps back at a board, you see the C-suite at the University of Virginia committed to increasing costs. There are parallels that could be made here with how the University of Virginia is choosing to manage and govern its institution, and how the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors are choosing to manage and govern Albemarle County. The supervisors, there's 6 of them in Albemarle County, are punch drunk with increasing the tax base. We are well over $600 million the jurisdiction costs to manage. $600 million in taxpayer money is utilized in a yearly budget to run Albemarle County. I want you to consider what the Albemarle County budget was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You would be shocked. I should have those numbers. You would be shocked what the Albemarle County budget was. Can you find what the Albemarle County 2020 yearly budget was?
2020?
Albemarle County 2020, 5 years ago. How much Albemarle County was spending on its budget for 1 year? It's well over $600 million now. It's the same thinking. 6 supervisors in Albemarle County: spend, tax. Spend some more, tax some more. Spend some more, and tax some more. And if anyone tells you, Livable CVille, I'm talking to you. Sally Duncan, I'm talking to you. Mike Pruitt, I'm talking to you. If anyone tells you that more rooftops is good for the tax base, you will push back on that. Because Weldon Cooper, the data from an independent, verified, trustworthy, very just third party said every house that's newly constructed brings in $1 in tax revenue, but costs $1.30 to the jurisdiction. Okay? Weldon Cooper's own stat, Albemarle County, for every house you bring in, it might be $1 in incremental tax revenue, but it's $1.30 it costs for that rooftop from a schooling standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, public schools, you name it. You got that number, 2020?
Not exactly.
That should be a straightforward Google search.
I mean, I've got an AI answer.
Neil Williamson, you got
AI.
that number for me, 2020 number? I would love if you had that, Neil. Mike Pruitt watching the program. What do you got, Judah Wickhauer?
According to the AI overview, take that with a grain of salt, perhaps. It was a little over $629 million.
That's definitely not true. Goodness gracious. That's what it is right now. 2020, Albemarle County. Oh, man. A little bit of frustration from yours truly.
Let's see. I've got FY20 adopted budget overview on a PDF. The county's total adopted fiscal year 2020 combined operating and capital budget totals $457,000. No, I mean $457 million.
All right, take that for a grain of salt. They're over $600 million now in a 5-year period of time. I mean, insane. Insane. The parallels between governance and management with the UVA C-suite and the parallels with governance and management with the Board of Supervisors in Albemarle County, the parallels are, the comparisons are obvious. Extremely obvious. Keep raising tuition. Keep taxing families to attend UVA. Tax, tax, tax. Spend, spend, spend.
You'll get the people with the most money, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee you'll get the smartest people.
It's not the smartest people. Neil Williamson's got the stat for us. Thank you, Neil. You're a gentleman and a scholar. If you were right here, I'd give you a flying chest bump, Neil Williamson. June 30, 2020. Albemarle County has finalized its spending plan for the fiscal year that ends on June 30, 2020. $456,800,000. $456,800,000. The Albemarle County budget fiscal year. The budget now is $644 million. You've gone in 2025, ladies and gentlemen. That's insane. God, that's nauseating. That is nauseating. And fiscal year, this is nauseating. Fiscal year that ends June 30, 2020, a $456 million budget to now $644 million. That is nauseating. And that's on the backs of you. That's on the backs of you. That's on the backs of me. That's on the backs of your children. That's on the backs of your children being able to live here, my children being able to live here. That's on the backs of business owners. That's on the backs of people on fixed income. That's on the backs of people that are living on Social Security, retirement. That's on the backs of first-time home buyers that are trying to get into the market. That's on the backs of tenants. People say, oh, this doesn't going to impact tenant. Every single person, listen to this program. I have 24 rentals in my portfolio. All the tax exposure trickles down to the tenants. It trickles down to the tenants. It's passed through on a lease. Nauseating. Next topic. What do you have? Thank you, Sir Neil Williamson. Support the Free Enterprise Forum. Neil Williamson does fantastic work.
Can UVA sports transition apathy into engagement?
That is the number one most important topic for the University of Virginia Athletic Department right now. How do they transition apathy into action? Apathy into activity. Apathy into engagement. Scott Stadium in 2024, last year, was one of the worst attended stadiums in the Atlantic Coast Conference, in the bottom few teams from average attendance in the ACC. I'm going to straight up Google this here. 2024 average football attendance ACC. 43,431 was the average attendance. The University of Virginia barely could crack 30,000.
Isn't that half their stadium?
61,000 is the stadium capacity. UVA was in the bottom of the ACC. Carla Williams' number one goal as athletic director is how do you turn apathy into action and activity with the fan base? At a time when her department is rolling out a new licensing plan for seats at the John Paul Jones Arena, where folks are going to have to fork over tens of thousands of dollars to maintain their seats. The University of Virginia has said at the John Paul Jones Arena, if you're blue collar, if you are working class, if you are middle class, we don't want you in our seats.
Yeah.
Because if you're at the area median income, $125,800 for the Charlottesville metro area, $125,800 seems like a lot of money. It's not that much money anymore, ladies and gentlemen. It's a tough pill for you to swallow, but it's a fact. It's certainly not that much money, $125,800 in Albemarle County in the city of Charlottesville, where they're expensive as HE double hockey sticks to live. That's the median, $125,800. If you're at the median, $125,800 or less, you're not going to spend tens of thousands of dollars for seats at the John Paul Jones Arena. The athletic department has said, middle class, working class, even upper middle class, we don't want you.
Yeah.
We are going after the top 10% of fans from a wealth standpoint.
And is that going to fill stadiums?
They're rolling this out in the next couple years. While the football team has the worst record over the last 3 years of any power football team, while Tony Bennett has retired, a new basketball coach is in, while Brian O'Connor has retired, a new baseball coach is in. The men's lacrosse team finished sub 500. And who is the face of UVA athletics right now? Everyone watching this program, I want you to ask yourself this question. Who is the face of UVA athletics right now? Who's the face of UVA athletics right now, Judah?
Ryan Odom.
Is Ryan Odom the face of UVA athletics? A person who's been on the job for a cup of coffee, for a New York minute? A man who's got one NCAA tournament victory on his resume, a win as head coach of UMBC against you-know-who. We were all there crying in our beer when it happened. Think about that. Who is the face of the UVA athletics right now? Isaac McNeely's gone. Anthony Calandria's gone. Jonas Sanker's gone. Isaac McNeely is at Louisville. Who's the face of UVA athletics? Tony Bennett's gone. Mm-hmm. Brian O'Connor's gone. You don't have a face right now. You don't have a face. The face was Tony Bennett. Then the natural segue from Bennett was Brian O'Connor. Who's your player face? Who's the most popular player in the UVA athletic department right now?
I couldn't tell you.
See? Ask yourself this. Who's the most popular player at the University of Virginia athletic department? Is it Gretchen Walsh, the swimmer? She's graduated. You see the conundrum they have here? You have a stadium that's more than half empty on a football team that's got the least amount of wins of any of the power football teams over the last 3 years. A head coach that's legitimately coaching for his job. You have no face of football, no face of basketball, and no face of department in totality. Unbelievable. Apathy into action. Apathy into activity should be on a whiteboard in Carla Williams' office. This is what the whiteboard should say. I Love CVille Show. Dash. Apathy into action. How do you do it? That's what should be on your whiteboard, Carla Williams. John Blair has this comment on LinkedIn. I think it's worth pointing out that political pundits across the nation are saying that jurisdictions like Albemarle will continue to drift further to the political left so long as Trump is in office. I think Spanberger will exceed 69% of the vote in November. She'll win 85% in Charlottesville, 100%. 100%. There is not a state in the free union, there is not a state in the United States of America that will be more drastically impacted by Donald Trump's second term than the Commonwealth of Virginia. The collateral damage from Donald Trump's second term is impacting the Commonwealth of Virginia more than any other state except for maybe California.
I was going to say.
Where it's World War III, where all hell is breaking out. The National Guard and the Marine Corps are trying to maintain peace and order.
Civil War.
He has devastated Trump. And this is not about Trump or federal or presidential politics, national politics. These are just effing facts here. He has raped Northern Virginia's economy, devastated Northern Virginia's economy. He is absolutely pulverizing federal funding at the University of Virginia. He's pulverizing nonprofit funding. Charlottesville and Albemarle County is one of the biggest epicenters for nonprofits out there. He's got Albemarle County Public Schools in his crossfire, literally talking Albemarle County Public Schools. He snatched the Federal Executive Institute away from Charlottesville Public Schools after giving the Charlottesville Public Schools the Federal Executive Institute and says, no, I'm doing a take me back. Some would call that, I asked the other day if I can use the term from yesteryear, when you give something to somebody and then you take it back from something. I've since decided after using that term on air that I can't use it anymore because it's not the preferred nomenclature. There is no state more impacted than Trump's policy and his second term than the Commonwealth. And if anyone thinks that Albemarle County, Charlottesville, there was a time after Trump won the White House, that Republicans in Albemarle County and in Charlottesville and across the Commonwealth felt emboldened. They felt they were walking chest out, pumped up, saying it's a new time, it's a new era. The Commonwealth, which is purple, is going to become a different hue of purple and more reddish. You're a Savannah College of Art and Design. Blue, the liberals. Red, the Republican. Virginia has been in that purple category. What are the various versions of purple? One that's more red than blue?
Mauve.
What?
Mauve.
What's mauve? Like from Home Alone? And the Wet Bandits and the Sticky Bandits? Marv?
Mauve.
Daniel Stern's character?
No. Close, but no cigar.
Put the hand in the red kettle and seal those coins with that sticky tape that's on your fingers. You don't remember that?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
The Sticky Bandits.
Okay.
He walked by in the streets of Manhattan with tape on his hand, masking tape on his hand, the Sticky Bandits. And he put his hand, into the red kettle. And when he stuck it into the red kettle, when the guy was ringing his bell at charity, he got all the coins stuck to his fingers.
Gotcha.
You don't remember that?
No.
Have you seen Home Alone?
It's been too long.
Have you watched Home Alone? Is that on the Judah list? Have you seen Home Alone?
I've 100% seen Home Alone.
You've seen Home Alone 1?
Yeah.
Have you seen Home Alone 2?
I believe I've seen them both, but it's probably been a good 3 or 4 decades.
What was the setting for Home Alone 2?
Doesn't he go to New York, like Trump Tower or something like that?
Okay.
Rent a hotel room by himself?
That's right.
Is any of that correct?
What was a significant lady in a public park? In Home Alone 2, there was a lady in a public park that helped save Kevin. She had an affinity for a certain animal. What was the animal the lady in the public park had an affinity for when she helped Kevin? She utilized her talents with managing this type of animal to save Kevin from the Sticky Bandits.
Squirrels?
Oh, goodness gracious.
No, you got me stumped on that one. I have no idea who the woman is.
Birds. The lady in the park had the pigeons at her fingertips and at total control. She was a puppeteer of pigeons. And she utilized the pigeons
Sticky pigeon fingers?
against the Sticky Bandits in the end of Home Alone 2. I don't think you've seen Home Alone 2.
I've probably seen Home Alone 1 a few times.
I don't think
when I
you've
was a
seen Home
kid.
Alone 2.
I've probably seen Home Alone 2 once. And it was probably, I don't know when the movie came out, but whenever the movie came out, it was probably the last time I saw it.
Okay. Pigeon Lady, Kevin Yancey. Neil Williamson, I thought you were going with a B. Arthur reference regarding Mauve. Neil. Oh, God. All right, we got to go make some money. What headline? Did we get all the headlines?
I think so. What do we got left? Just the Lewis Mountain HOA head on the show tomorrow.
Jerry Cox tomorrow.
Yep.
Jerry Cox tomorrow. Janice Boyce Trevelyan says UVA swimming is the face of the Virginia Athletic Department. That's crazy.
Yeah.
UVA swimming is the face of the Virginia Athletics Department. Missy Snelling says, get a good team and people will show up if they can afford it. Jeremy Wilson's watching in Eastern Tennessee. He says, it blows my mind that there are people that believe more taxes are the answer to fixing problems. Absolutely blows my mind. It blows my mind when people says, let's raise taxes to fund housing affordability. That is an oxymoron. Raise taxes to fund housing affordability. Anyone who says that to you, you should push back on them immediately and say, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. You're an idiot. That's what you should say. Raise taxes to make housing affordability. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
That's what you should say. The Wednesday edition of the show, Judah Wickhauer and Jerry Miller. We'll be better tomorrow. So long, everybody.